Welcome back to the podcast. We are here with Mickie Kennedy from eReleases.com. Now, Mickie Kennedy is an expert at helping small businesses, authors, and startups increase their visibility and credibility. And we were going to be talking today about doing that with press releases. Now, Mickie founded eReleases 22 plus years ago. Now, why the heck would he do that? Well, because he realized that small businesses desperately need a press release service they can actually afford. And that includes you right here, right now, listening or watching this podcast. And so Mickie can give you access to the media and to a national newswire with a personal touch. So Mickie, glad to be talking to you.
Oh, same here. Great to be here.
It is great to have you. And, you know, even just you being here on the podcast shows that we all need to be putting our best foot forward and be getting ourselves out there and marketing and spreading our message, because no one will do it for us. It won't happen automatically. And I've heard of this thing called press releases. I think that we've all at least heard of it or seen it. And we always hear about this thing where it seems to have somewhat of a format or a template, but I'm always thinking like, well, I don't really know how to put my message into that template. And then you hear about how that like you can send this one thing out and pay a little bit of money and it gets sent all over the place. And then you always hear about these success stories here and there. People put out a press release and the right person saw it. They got it on the right media outlet or the right, it went viral or something like that. And so can you tell us about press releases? Because as you can tell, I just have little bits and pieces of just what I've heard and picked up. And I'd rather hear from the expert. I'd rather get the kind of that foundational, fundamental knowledge. So press releases, tell me.
So basically a press release is an announcement by a company or person. It's usually written in the third person. There might be a first person quote, and a good tip is to always have a really captivating quote, because sometimes if the story is mediocre, but the quote is outstanding, a journalist will write an article around it. You want to have a really tantalizing headline. You don't want it to be punny or sort of quizzical or funny, like a New York Post style, where you might use a pun or something like that. You want to stick to the facts. You want to make it easy for journalists who are streaming headlines to see that this is something that would be relevant to them. A lot of people get tripped up over the style or the template of a press release, but they're pretty simple. If you go to eReleases.com, my website, and at the footer, click on press release samples, you'll see a lot there. And almost anyone can write a release, because it's not really like high level writing. It's not creative writing outside of maybe what you might put in a quote. But the real power of the press release that a lot of people don't recognize is what it is you're choosing to announce. Strategically, what is it that you've decided is important enough that you want to send it to the media? And so many people choose press releases that are a personnel change, or a website's now mobilely responsive, or other things that no one really cares about. You know, it's probably important that your website's mobile responsive, but no one's going to write an article about it. David in HR moved from associate to assistant HR assistant or something like that. Nobody cares about those either. So, focus on things that are a lot more strategic. And a lot of people who feel like, well, I don't have anything strategic because I'm not important. I'm not really doing anything. I'm selling a commodity. There's very little that I do that differentiates myself. I would say you have to dig down deep and try and determine what will be your USP. There's a lot of people who sell Apple computers. Apple doesn't let people sell it for, I think within 5% of the suggested retail price. They control that. So a lot of people have to compete on other factors. Some people bundle it with software. Some people bundle it with accessories or a free Apple Watch or something like that they throw into it. But everybody has a USP that sells it. I mean, even Best Buy does promotions where you get a $25 gift card if you buy your Apple computer through them. So they're all doing something a little bit different than everyone else. Find out what yours is. If you don't have one, you really need to create one, because you don't want to be in the position of being a commodity business without something that differentiates you from everyone else. Even if it's just customer service or something that's very hard to identify, there's something about your culture and your business that makes you unique. Other things that you can do is make your own news. I do this all the time with clients. I've done it with a local auto repair shop in Pennsylvania. I've done it with some other companies. And it's basically you author a survey or study in your industry industry and you put it out there. And in the case of the auto repair shop in Pennsylvania, they got like about a dozen auto trade publications picked it up. Numerous newspapers picked it up, including their local newspaper. And it did phenomenally well. And they're not experts in the auto industry, but they are the expert of that survey. They put together the questions. I gave some input. I told them to put a couple crazy questions in there. I always recommend that, put your standard questions that people would like to know right now, but also throw in one or two oddballs. And the one we put in that one that did really well was, what's the strangest thing a customer left in their car while being repaired? And we just left it where people could put about 2 sentences. And we got lots of crazy anecdotes. And that was what went viral. People really resonated with these crazy stories of boa constrictors, grandma being left in an urn, all of these little things. And, we as readers and an audience, those stories are cool. They're interesting. And that is newsworthy. And you can, author that study. You don't even have to have, leads. In this case, they didn't know who to send it to. We knew we wanted to get other auto trade companies involved, and repair centers involved. And so we just reached out to an independent trade association and said, could you send this survey to your members? We'll mention you in the press release. And they said, sure. The smaller and more independent trade associations are much more receptive to that, because all the large trade associations get all the love and the media hype out there. So if you're willing to promote them a little bit, go for it. In some cases, you may want to even consider co-branding the survey between you and the trade association. So just try to look for win-wins like that, places where you could be more strategic. If you have a viewpoint that is contrarian, or you can rationally come across with a contrarian viewpoint on an industry hot button, you stand a much higher chance of getting media pickup whenever anyone in your industry talks about it, because so many people tend to go with the prevailing thoughts and what the trends are. And if everybody's moving forward in the auto industry, everybody's moving pro electric car. But if you're the rational person saying, not so fast, there's a lot of things that have to be solved. We don't know what we're going to do with these batteries at the end of their life from an environmental standpoint and recycling standpoint. There's the minerals that make up these batteries, the labor practices, and the environmental hazards of mining these are very difficult questions that we kind of need to solve first. And you don't come across as crazy, but it's a viewpoint that every time a journalist covers a subject, and they should be objective and cover all sides, they have a go-to for the con side, the person who's pointing out the negative, and that could be you. And you could get a lot of coverage out of that, as compared to one of the people who's just going along and rubber stamping what everyone else is saying.
Man, that's a lot to think about just in the first half of our discussion here. And it seems like a lot of fun. And I can tell that you have a lot of fun kind of being creative and thinking outside the box. So you're saying that we can write our press release ourselves. That's kind of the easy part. And that eReleases.com is the place to go there and look at some of these samples. And you're saying that we should be kind of thinking or paying attention to like things that are like kind of sort of newsworthy. So not just an internal organizational change, no one cares about that. But if there is something like fun and interesting and exciting, and something that's maybe a little weird or maybe a little funny, or something that you could see appearing on the local news or being mentioned, maybe something of that nature. That's kind of the vibe I got, like when you said that there's that survey there of what are the weirdest things people left in their car. That seems like kind of like a local news thing that they might put in like near the end of the program, as far as like to tap into this mindset of what goes viral and what would people be like, what would the masses be sharing who maybe are themselves not at the very moment interested in getting their car serviced, but could share it and then could get kind of the wider audience there. And and this is all really fun to think about, and especially kind of how you kind of have this multi-part strategy of sometimes even saying, well, I want to do this survey, and I don't maybe even have enough of a traffic or audience or a list to do the survey myself, but I can kind of partner with someone else and tap into their audience, talk to this association, and then use them. And it works in so many ways, right? Because you kind of use the association to get your news or your press release figured out. and you mention them, plus you get this sort of connection figured out. And in a way, you help them too. So that's something else to circle back around. And I love stuff like that. I love how when, especially with the other PR guys like you kind of have like a multi-step strategy. Like I heard once of, and I don't even know what it means, but it stuck with me for all these years, of this guy saying, well, if you're going to be doing this thing, then put out a press release announcing that thing. But then a month before that, put out a press release announcing the announcement. Like I love things like that, where it's like kind of almost gimmicky, but it serves a purpose of getting people's attention, waking people up, like you said there, being contrarian in some ways, and like following the news and following the trends, but not being a Me Too kind of person as well. Just saying like, well, here's the thing everyone's talking about, but let me be like the little pebble in the road. Let me be someone that is like kind of bringing attention to a minor issue that is relating to the trend that not everyone is talking about. It's really interesting to think about. And so to help us kind of still understand the roadmap, so there's like that press release kind of sort of format that we can look at and see what works and see what it is. And then you hear a lot about like press release distribution, and like that itself is a mystery to me as well, because I sometimes see like different websites that do it, and I'm thinking like, well, does any website work for this? And like, where does it go? Does it end up like, does the Associated Press get it? And then you also see different kind of price ranges. So can you help us like kind of decode that part of it? Like, where's the place to submit our press release? Are they all the same, or some better than others? And what's sort of the price range, and what does it mean?
Right. So in the US, we have three major news wires of press releases. It's Globe Newswire is the smallest, Business Wire is middle of the road, and then PR Newswire, which is owned by Cision, is the oldest and largest newswire press releases. All of the releases at eReleases go through PR Newswire. The retail for the average customer to do a national release through PR Newswire is $1,000 for a 500, 600 word press release. Through eReleases, because we sort of act as a co-op for small businesses, we've developed a custom national distribution with PR Newswire. Sort of takes into account some of the sources we already have in our database, but our prices are like $269 for a new customer coming in. $200 to $400 is usually the level for distribution through us. There are a lot of lower priced people out there. They tend to do web only or syndicated runs. So you'll get your press release syndicated with a bunch of your URLs showing your press release on these little websites. It can be valuable from a branding standpoint. We can put as featured on these little ABC, Fox, CBS, little local stations, but no journalist saw it. Nobody wrote anything about it, and it's not going to drive traffic or sales to your business. The only way for PR to do that is to get it to actual media and journalists, and you're going to have to use a service that it costs money. And I think that Globe Newswire is around $650 to $700. Business Wire is closer to PR Newswire in price, so it can be considerable. But if you're a small business or you're doing just a few releases a year, a service like eReleases is a really good fit. And there's really no one cheaper than us that's providing a real newswire distribution nationally out there, as well as the email distribution that we provide to journalists that are in our database. But there is confusion. We have people who say, I paid $59 to go over this XXX wire or something like that, and it never reached a journalist. And there were a few links that they saw where their release was on a few websites, but nothing generally comes from that. Just to give you the flip side, last year we did a press release for the Dining Bond Initiative, which was modeled after the war bonds, where they were trying to help local businesses, predominantly restaurants in this case. And basically you would nominate your local restaurant. If they accepted, you would basically make a donation. It would go directly to the restaurant immediately, and it would be secured through a dining bond or gift certificate type strategy. One press release, it got over 150 articles, New York Times, Washington Post, all your major food travel magazines and publications picked it up. We quit counting at 150. We just, there was a lot of little minor newspapers and other places that picked it up that we didn't even bother recording because we just had so many clips as a result of it. Generated millions of dollars in revenue to help these local businesses. One press release, what normally would have cost $269, we did it as for free. But that's the kind of leverage that is possible with PR. It's unlikely you'll ever get 10 plus millions of dollars from one press release. But it's not unusual for my clients to do a press release that gets favorable articles and it drives traffic, and they get tens of thousands of dollars in sales or even more. And so, this leverage opportunity is where PR can really work. But so many people go into it and they test one press release, which is not a PR campaign. You generally want to do between 4 to 8 releases on different strategic hooks to get a feel for what works in your industry. And you learn from each one. And sometimes if one does really well, maybe you could tweak it and make it slightly different. In the case of the survey, I have a client that survey worked really well for them. So now they do 40 surveys a year. Now they're fortunate that they cover lots of little verticals. So they could do a survey on each little vertical as they go, but each one they get between 8 and 14 articles on average as a result of each press release. And these are industry specific, they're customers specific, and it drives, for them millions of dollars in revenue, because of their ability to recognize what good surveys are. And, right now is a right time for anybody to do a survey because we've got a lot of unknowns in our future. So a lot of people are wondering, are things, going to go back to a lockdown? Is the economy going to slow down, or is it the worst behind us? And if you were to take your industry's temperature right now and say, what's your outlook? What's your spending as far, are you contracting? Are you spending more, or are you spending about the same? That's really useful information that people in your industry would want to know. So if you published a survey right now and you included questions like that, taking their temperature, you would probably do very well. So anytime that there's something going on, or just, some unknown or something within the industry, if you could take their temperature and their feelings about it and, evaluate it from several different questions, from several different perspectives, one's maybe being financial, one being more emotional or psychological. And, also you could look at HR and hiring. Do you plan on hiring more, or, is hiring difficult for you? We know that hiring is really problematic for a lot of industries right now. So again, incorporating things like that in your questionnaire would probably make it something that a lot of industry trade publications would, write about, including perhaps newspapers as well that might cover that.
Yeah, and this is really cool to think about. There's a lot of like kind of outside the box kind of strategy. So it seems like, well, you touched on something a few minutes ago, which is I've been hearing it a lot more often of someone saying, well, X strategy didn't work. And then when you find out what they did was they just tried it one time, kind of like you said, I put out a press release once and it didn't work, so I'll just write off all of anything PR. And then someone like you would say, well, you did it one time, and you were maybe even were expecting it to fail, and you weren't going into it with maybe a mindset of, well, let me maybe like tweak it later, or let me try it 4 times or 8 times, or let me try attacking it from different angles. You just tried it once and said, okay, at least I can check that off the bucket list and I don't ever have to revisit it. And it's like, and you hear that with just so many different like traffic kind of sources, right? Like I tried paid ads, it didn't work. I tried SEO, it didn't work. And it's like, are you really going to write off this whole method, this whole tried and true industry just because you personally tried it one time and it didn't work? So I'm getting that kind of vibe from you as far as like, well, this is maybe something to do long term. And you might have to like, tweak things. You might have to see something might fall flat, something might work, and then you can revisit that, reuse that in a different way later. But then you're also saying that this is more of like a long game where don't just expect to launch this one and then have tens of millions of dollars. It might be something that you do every few months as you kind of can chase the news, or you can figure out what kind of new things are happening. And I find it interesting that your kind of go-to, at least with some of these examples, is the survey. And that's really cool to think about, because it seems like, and especially this last couple of years, there's like this disconnect of it's either one extreme or the other. It's either, well, I got this friend of a friend who said this about this medical issue or about this legal issue. And it's like, well, you're just taking one tiny little anecdotal story. But then the other extreme of that is you say, well, there's all this data and all these things to pour over. And you're thinking, well, that's equally unhelpful. So this is cool how you say, well, by kind of meeting people in the middle and having this kind of news PR kind of splash in the water, is you have the survey and you figure out, well, am I going to talk to this industry or these experts in this industry or this particular job type, like HR people, or just like retail businesses or whoever? Like, what kind of person am I going to contact and with these survey questions, and have some of the basic things and take your temperature and know what everyone's thinking, but then also throw in kind of the fun questions to have the viral aspect of it. It's really cool to think about that. There's like things, there's problems to be solved, and there's kind of a little bit of the creativity and thinking outside the box. But you've given us a lot of these starting points as far as the press release template and the survey idea. Like, there's kind of a jumping off point to start off from, and then we can apply our own magic. It's cool to think about. And so in these last few minutes, as we're kind of getting closer to the tail end of our conversation here, Mickie, where do you see people failing with press releases? Like, we've covered a couple of bases, but if there's something where, someone said, I've tried it before and I failed, or I'm afraid to even try because I'm worried about all the things I don't know, what is an easy thing to avoid failing at with press releases?
I think it's changed your perspective. The press release should not be self-serving. While you do want to promote yourself, the goal of your announcement should serve the journalist. The journalist, again, acts as a gatekeeper. And if you can envision that, they're deciding and looking at all this content and saying, what would my audience be interested in? And if you can sort of, realize that and say, well, I'm announcing a new reboot of my product, version 1.5 or something, that's very self-serving. Is there something that I could put in here that would make this stand out and make it more, resonate better with an audience? Is there features or highlights that I could bring in here to light that would make it really interesting to that audience? Is there a case study or a use study of something like this that would really help? And therefore journalists would say, oh, people in my audience would really, be interested in something like that. So I think if you keep looking at the press release as not just serving you by, this is news I want to get out, but it's like news I want to get out, but I have to do it through the lens of a journalist. And so I kind of have to reverse engineer some of what I'm writing to take that into account. And where are the opportunities in this press release to make it not serve me, but the journalist who really wants to provide captivating content to their audience.
Fantastic. That's interesting to think about. That is this reverse engineer mentality. And it's easy, like you said, to just either try the strategy, in quotes, of throwing things to the wall, seeing what sticks, talking about myself, and all those things seem like recipes for failure. But if you say, well, what ended up getting the virality? What press releases impressed me, or what press releases found their way to me? And then reverse engineer with that attitude of, okay, well, like you said, like, the point is to get it in front of journalists. And sure, you could get it out in the newswire and get it in the back pages and be able to have the logos of saying it was on this NBC affiliate or whatever. But as far as the actual goal, which is getting it in front of journalists, these journalists are thinking every day about the audience that they want to serve. They say, what is my audience interested in? So what a concept, why not give it to them? And so this is all really cool stuff to think about. And we said that eReleases.com is where there are those press release samples. And if someone has got the itch now for press releases, for PR, for pursuing some of this and actually giving it a real shot, and not just saying, let me try it and then give up later. If someone really was serious about using this as a traffic tool to get more attention in their business of whatever kind, what's the next step here? Where should they go? What should they do?
Right. So I'm going to recommend that they go to eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And that's a free video masterclass I've got. It's less than an hour. but it just goes through about 8 strategies, like the survey, like the contrarian approach, but they're tried and true strategies that work time and time again. And if they were to watch that hour thinking about their business and not have at least 6 to 12 ideas for their next PR campaign, then it probably isn't going to work for them, because I've laid out what strategies work. And if you were to look at that through, your business and how your business would apply to that, I'm sure you're going to come up with a brainstorm of lots of ideas. And that's where I would go first. Come up with these great ideas. And if you could come up with strategic ideas, then you can build a PR campaign of, 6 to 8 press releases and see if PR works for you. And just to let you know, I haven't had anyone follow the model of those 8 strategies and not get media success with a PR campaign of 6 releases. So, and generally, the least anyone's ever gotten from a survey or study is 4 articles. And that's still a pretty decent amount, especially if it's a really good trade association. But on average, it's anywhere from 8 to 16 is usually the average for a survey or study press release that you get out there.
Super great. Well, you heard Mr. Mickie. The place to go is eReleases.com/plan. It's only an hour. What else are you going to do with an hour of your life? And as Mickie said, you watch the video, you take it seriously, you get these 8 strategies. And if you honestly watch this 1-hour video and you get nothing from it, then you're in the wrong business. Then you should go and work at McDonald's or something. And if you watch this 1-hour video and you get these 8 strategies and you apply it, and they don't work, then give up on your business completely. Then throw your computer out the window. Obviously, we're just kidding, but this press release thing, it might not seem exciting on the surface, but when you dive into it, I get excited about it. And it's a thing that can be exciting. And it seems like it's kind of a blend between the old and the new, right? There's still these huge news corporations. There's still these journalists. And then press releases have also embraced the duplicatability, the virality of the internet. So why not use this technique that is thankfully not overcrowded, but it's also proven from all these decades of journalism. And why not use it to get extra attention on your website, on your brick and mortar service, on whatever new hot trend you want people to be aware of. And it could be a fun outside the box way for you to get more attention on you and what you do. So run, don't walk, go right now. It's eReleases.com/plan. Watch the video, get the 8 strategies. You're going to love it. And then you'll get the PR press release itch. And then you'll want to contact Mickie and his team afterwards to move things in the next direction and use press releases as not something you thought about once or you tried once, but something that is a vital, valuable part of your business moving forward. eReleases.com/plan. Anything else to say, Mickie, as we wrap up, wind down our conversation?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I would just say PR has so much leverage capability where for a little bit of effort and time and a little bit of money, you can, get a factor of, 20, 40, 200 times what you spend is possible. And I see it every day. And it just excites me, especially when you can put the creative brainstorm together and come up with these great strategies that will work for you.